When asked for his advice on how to be a good public speaker, Franklin Roosevelt replied, "It's simple. Be sincere, be brief, be seated." And yet, as straightforward and indisputable as this advice is, learning how to give a speech to an audience is no easy task. It is, however, a vital skill in a world that places a high premium on good communication skills and the ability to present a clear and concise message to those you need to impress, whether it's something as simple as an assembly announcement or sitting down for a college or a job interview. And for the past several weeks, the entire 9th grade has been taking part in this year's freshman speech contest, an exercise specifically designed to give everyone a chance to practice putting together and then performing a short speech. And while it might sometimes feel more like a chore than an opportunity, there is a definite reason that everyone in this theater has either gone through it or will go through it. Simply put, the ability to speak logically and coherently in public is something everyone is going to have to do at some point, and you may as well start to learn how to do it earlier rather than later. As such, everyone who took part in the speech contest should feel very proud of themselves for having successfully completed it. And this morning, we're going to hear from the 3 gentlemen who scored the highest at the semifinals last Friday. Each year, students have a choice of 3 topics to base their speeches on, and the past topics are on the slide you can see right now. This year's topics were teamwork, which was the theme for the year, or a book that had been particularly inspirational or motivational to you, or, and this was a repeat topic from last year's competition, the role of the media in modern American life and politics. Our 3 finalists, in the order they will be speaking, are Tania Ghosh, Colin Smith, and Sam Meacham, and all 3 of them will be speaking on the topic of the role of the media. Our distinguished judges for today's finals are Dr. Leck, Mrs. Palmore, Mr. Berry, Mrs. Bassett, and Mr. Clark. Thank you to all of them for helping out this morning. Thank you also in particular to Mr. Quinn for having made the whole contest run so smoothly, and to Dr. Morrow, who will be tabulating the scores. All 3 of the speakers you are about to hear from have done exceptionally well to be here this morning, so please listen to them attentively and show your appreciation for each of them once they are done. The first speaker is Tania, so please welcome him as he comes up here to get these finals underway.
In the words of one of the most influential civil rights activists, Malcolm X, the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent, and that's power, because they control the minds of the masses. The media is characterized by the means of mass communication. In today's world, we can't imagine life without it, because it's constantly creating connections of empathy between us and stories. Stories as poignant as a girl losing her legs to a landmine in Somalia, or ones as interesting as Amazon considering building their new headquarters in Nashville. Without us realizing, however, the media constantly and consistently impacts us, specifically in the role of modern-day American politics. Whether it's to help politicians, watch the government, or simply get us intrigued and focused on the news. So let's start with the first point. In fact, let's start when mass media was introduced. 1910, we get the radio, 1950, the television, 1990, the internet. So as you can see, the media is relatively new, but it's rapidly becoming more and more involved in our lives. Mass media empires like CNN and Fox News are now known to take a specific viewpoint. CNN, for example, might have more of a liberal approach, while Fox News might have more of a conservative. Despite these different perspectives and views, we watch either one. The reason we do this falls into the main reason media was first created. We all know of checks and balances within our own government. But do we know of the hidden third party? The 4th branch of government? The media. The media was created in earlier times to watch the government, make sure they did everything with the people's approval. Let's give a pretty well-known example. Hillary Clinton. How did we know about her getting money from Wall Street? In fact, how did we know about her email scandal? Was it on the FBI's website? No, it was from local and national news stations, as well as social media. Since we're on the topic of politicians, let's move on to the next point. How do politicians use media? For one, they use it to determine the outcomes of an election. A poll showed in the previous 2016 election that President Trump, well, currently now President Trump, was shown the most, and then Clinton, and then Bernie Sanders. Is it a coincidence that Clinton beat Sanders, but Trump beat Clinton? I doubt it. See, it's shown and proven by statistics that the more you're shown on media, the more you're talked about and the more you're discussed, the more people learn about you, and the more they're inclined to vote for you. Besides elections, how do politicians learn information on their rivals and competitors? Unless they have bugs or put spies in other offices, they usually use local news stations, ones with the least bias, to get the most information. Moving on to the last and final point. How are we affected by media when sometimes their only goal is to help themselves? We all know the term fake news, right? But what most of us don't know is that it's actually a multi-million-dollar industry around the world. In a recent CNN article I read, I found out that families in Macedonia were depending on sending fake news to countries like us to put food on their tables, to pay for their education. The problem with this, though, is that the fake news articles are often super intriguing, and often we don't realize they're fake. Without us realizing, these types of fake news could potentially harm us for the rest of our lives. But that's just fake news. Normal media usually doesn't use it. Rather, normal media usually takes news and adds a little or a lot of bias. And depending on that bias, depending on their perspective, and depending on their arguments, we are affected in different ways. Ultimately, media is deeply integrated into modern-day American politics. Without media, politics wouldn't even have the same meaning. Who knows? Maybe one day you'll be part of the media. Whether you're on YouTube or a popular person on Instagram, you'll be affecting people all around the world. Take a look around you, all the media surrounding us every day. How much of you do you think has been affected by it? Thank you.
And that's the way it is. For 2 decades, the most trusted man in America, Walter Cronkite, ended the CBS Evening News with those words. In a media landscape with only 3 networks, he dominated. 70 million Americans watched him cover the JFK assassination. When he removed his glasses, teared up a bit, and read the announcement that President Kennedy had died in Dallas, Texas at 1 p.m. Central Time, the nation teared up with him. He was so loved, he was so trusted, that his nickname was Uncle Walter. To be clear, ABC and NBC were also trusted. They were trusted because they covered the story. There was a huge gap between the newsrooms and the editorial shows, and no network wanted to be known for bias. Now let me ask you, after the last decade, after the last few election cycles, can you imagine a world in which the vast majority of Americans actually trusted the media? You see, back in the 1960s and 70s, the mainstream media was big, but they weren't a part of the story. Today it's different. Much of the media happily takes sides and hopes that they impact the election. In 2017, Fox News is the most watched TV network in America. But let me ask you, does anyone actually believe that they're fair and balanced, as their slogan says? Last year, MSNBC increased their ratings by 50%, but their slogan for years, Lean Forward, was meant to imply a clearly progressive point of view. And while partisan networks grew and dominated, CNN did not live up to its branding as America's news network. They dropped 16% in the ratings. So what happened? How did we get to the place where the media lost its trusted role as the 4th branch of government and instead became cheerleaders, bullies, and hacks? Well, that started long before the internet. In fact, this problem was predicted way back in 1964 when Marshall McLuhan coined the phrase, "The medium is the message." Listen to what he said. "The expansion of electrical TV and radio will create a retribalization of the West." Let me repeat that, a retribalization of the West. So sadly, he was right. With the expansion in the number of TV channels because of cable and satellite, networks had to carve out their own little niche in order to prosper and grow. And with the increase of AM, FM, and satellite radio, conservative talk radio found a home. The pioneer and still king of talk radio, Rush Limbaugh, now calls himself America's anchor man. And with 25 million listeners, he may be right, but let's be clear, he is no Walter Cronkite. But wait, the fragmentation didn't end there. With the disruptive and hyperbolic growth of the internet, we got news media that was much further right and further left. There is no doubt that Steve Bannon and Breitbart News didn't use the internet to report on the election. Can you even call them news? Their sole purpose was to impact the election. And in this case, they even impacted the policies of the guy who now sits in the Oval Office. And on the far left, MoveOn.org was a catalyst and thought leader for progressives, and they're growing too. In thinking about this, the fragmentation of the media in their search for ratings and profits by focusing on niche markets isn't the only culprit. The parties are to blame as well. Gerrymandering, the creation of completely safe districts for a political party, has created congressional districts where the primary elections are actually the only elections that matter. But in primaries, voter turnout is low and dominated by hyper-partisans. And gerrymandering has magnified the impact of the extreme media. So while congressional districts may be safe, this trend means that sadly, the future of American democracy is not. You see, the media doesn't just report on the elections. They try, and do, impact them. And that's the way it is. Monday, February 26th, 2018. Thank you.
Fake news, alternative facts, media bias. These and more buzzwords are things we all hear every day when discussing the American media and its role in the modern political climate. News outlets on both sides portraying vastly different political messages appeal to niche markets in order to boost ratings and portray a specific political message. It's necessary to discuss the true role of media in American democracy before we discuss the problems of the modern day. As we all know, the First Amendment affords media outlets with freedom of the press, or the ability to print or report what they want without fear of governmental repercussions. This is what differs America greatly from other authoritarian governments who may jail or kill journalists for unfavorable press. For the most part, America has a positive history of the media for this reason. The radio and television, the advent of radio and television during the 1900s allowed media to reach every corner of America. This, in the first place, led to more unity, as people were hearing for many years the same message. But in recent years, this has led to more divide, as the advent of multiple cable news outlets has sown division and resentment in our country, as different people are receiving vastly different depictions of the same events from right-wing and left-wing news sources. According to a 2017 Gallup poll, 41% of Americans distrust the news media. This is against everything the media is meant to be. The media is key in American politics for two reasons. First is to hold the government and corporations accountable for their actions. During the 1900s, the press was critical in the Watergate and Pentagon paper scandals during the administration of Richard Nixon in holding the government accountable for corruption and informing the people about these problems. Second is media is key to an educated populace during elections. This stat is disturbing for these two reasons. Along with these massive distrust, there are accusations of fake news and media bias from both the right and the left sides of the aisle. But we should stop. What is fake news? Is fake news the recent CNN story about Trump and Russia that may or may not have some conjecture, or is it something else? The truth behind fake news is during the 2016 election, Macedonian teenagers were sold their stories, often with outrageous lies and hyperbole, to fringe American news outlets to spread lies about each candidate during the election. But this term in recent times has been commandeered into a sort of slogan from the right and the left to attack unfavorable coverage. President Trump's attacks on the media have added to this divide as well. His newfound use of Twitter is revolutionary for the media, as it circumvents the normal process of the news media and appeals directly to the American people. President Trump has been more focused in his attacks on the media than any president since Richard Nixon. This is seen as a problem by many and can sow division between the base of President Trump's base and other parts of America who may be seeing a different message while watching the left-leaning mainstream media. This is a threat to democracy for many reasons. First, as I said earlier, the media is key to holding the government accountable. And without credibility and the majority of the population believing them, politicians and other corporations may be able to get away with horrible working conditions in factories, with corruption, with money laundering, with many other problems that happen that should not happen in America. Unfortunately, there's no catch-all solution to the problems of the modern media. But there are some steps the media, the populace, and the government can take. The media can focus on more neutral coverage, as currently, as we all know, news outlets focus on one side of a story and not the not multiple angles as they should. The populace should also make sure that all of you should make sure that you're checking the facts, everything you read. Next time you read a Fox News article, make sure that you're checking what's in here is facts and what is conjecture. Finally, the government should cease their attacks on the press, as this is a major threat to the First Amendment and the freedom of the press. While none of these solutions would work in isolation, and none of them together would even solve the entire problem facing us as a country, they may put us forward on the path to a better nation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again to the judges for your help. The prizes, just to let you all know, everyone who made it to the final will get a $100 gift card, and then the winner will get a $250 gift card. Everyone did very well with their speeches today. It was a close result, with 250 points being available, just 5 points separated first and second from the judges' standpoint. But the winner of the 2018 Freshman Speech Contest is Tania.
Okay, congratulations.